News. I'm going to be getting into some other Marvel news right here with VFX artists. So this is, I said variety before. So this is an article from Vulture, my mistake. And it's a article about a VFX artist talking about working for Marvel in the incredibly stressful conditions, what it's like working for them. Here in the opening paragraph, it says it's pretty well known and even darkly joked about across all the visual effects houses that working on Marvel shows is really hard. When I worked on one movie, it was almost 6 months of overtime every day. I was working on 7 days a week, averaging 64 hours a week on a good week. Marvel genuinely works you really hard. I've had coworkers sit next to me, break down, and start crying. That people having anxiety attacks on the phone. Um, and in the article it also mentions how Marvel will midway through all of a sudden change direction and go like, oh well, you kind of want this whole third act changed, and it will, you know, have the it really hinders the whole movie because they bring up the example of Black Panther. They says like that was one of the big issues with Black Panther, which is like yeah, a lot of people can tell. A lot of people that's a big complaint about these movies is the third act and how it looks. That like I talked about with Shang
Hmm.
Chi, it's like that scene where he's fighting Tony Leon's character, where there's like it's ugly and it's gray and it's like it just looks so terrible. And then the Black Panther thing, like with the rhinos and the people and they're moving like in the article it mentions how like there's like they're kind of floating, kind of like action figures and things
Hmm.
like that. Um, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people can definitely tell, and a lot of people remarked it with Thor: Love
Hmm.
and Thunder. You saw a lot of kind of effects with that movie. A lot of people talked about with that. Now, there's some stuff that looks good in that movie. Like I like the Shadow Realm. I like when they go to
Hmm.
the City of the Gods. I think looks good. But yeah, you can generally tell a lot of stuff in that movie that doesn't look good. And this is Thor: Love and Thunder was a $200 million movie, and the fact that
Yeah.
they're doing a lot of crunch with VFX people, and this also is very reminiscent of things like what happens in the video game industry. Of all that crunch that happens there that works people to the bone. I kind of want to get your opinion on that, Joe.
Sad, man. I mean, shit, man. And two, man, we don't even know if these people be understaffed. Like, how big is the staff of these people that's working? To
Uh,
work 7 days a week, that's crazy. Nah, that's crazy, man. That's ridiculous. Overtime and breaking down. But shit, you got a good job and you want to keep that job, man. But nobody should go through
Hello
that.
there.
You got to think about yourself first in this motherfucking case, man. But I do
uh,
see like that a lot of movies. Well, some Marvel movies are going into the practical mode. Like Black Panther, kind of the new Black Panther looks a little bit more practical.
yeah. Um, yeah. It says so in the article. It says it mentions maybe a month or two before a movie comes out, Marvel will have us change the entire third act. It
Mhm.
really tight. So it's a really tight turnaround times. So yeah, I mean that's another big issue there. And then they say that one of the issues is that Marvel will get directors that don't have much experience working with VFX people. So they don't know how it kind of all operates and how it's done and everything like that. So that's another big issue with kind of some of these things is that directors don't have personal experience working with VFX houses. The person also did mention that some of the problems are universal to every show and every project, but not every client has the bullying power Marvel does, because apparently Marvel can really ruin your reputation if you don't do a really good job with these or you don't really work that hard. You know what I mean? And the fact that Marvel, the sheer amount of products they have coming out per year. I mean, there's one year where they're gonna have 6 shows. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? In one year, that's a lot of special effects to be done. For
Yeah.
those shows. So that's a major problem there. Yeah. But you talked about like the Black Panther trailer. What do you think in the Black Panther trailer, like specifically the practical effects there?
I mean, I think a little bit more of it look practical. Well, I mean, they only show so much, but if you notice, a lot of the scenes that they showed was more of the shit that was like when the Koye staff gets hit and stuff. Like a lot of fight scenes that was like that. You didn't see the suit until at the end or whatever, so you didn't see any suit fights. You didn't see any monsters. You didn't see any like creatures or nothing like that. You kind of just seemed like just basic shit. But we'll never know when the second come out. That might be a fucking CG porn fest when it comes out. But dude, that's one thing too. I don't know. I don't want to play devil's advocate, but like shit, do they have different production houses that work on different shows? Like I'm pretty sure the same production people ain't working on the show at once because these shows are different. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah. In the article, I believe it mentioned, I'm trying to find it right there, where it mentions like some people are spread very thin, like working on all these different Marvel projects.
mm,
You know what I mean? So it doesn't, they don't have a good amount of people to probably, working on these. But I'm going to try to find that mentioned in the article in a minute. The part where I was talking about the Black Panther, the big issue with that. So the other issues is when you're in post production, we don't have a director of photography involved. So we're coming up with these shots. A lot of the time, it causes a lot of incongruity. A good example of what happens in these scenarios is the battle scene in the end of Black Panther. The physics are completely off. Suddenly, the characters are jumping around, doing all these crazy moves like action figures in space. Suddenly, the camera is doing these motions that haven't happened in the rest of the movie. It also looks a bit cartoony. It has broken the visual language of the film. Yeah, I mean, you can. Yeah, I think people can definitely tell that. You know what I mean? That was
yeah,
kind of one of my big issues with Black Panther was the third act of it.
and I don't think they. I don't think they try to make that same mistake because I feel like you seen the first Black Panther trailer. I think they showed Black Panther. They maybe showed him doing some shit. You know what I'm saying? So this one they didn't show none of that. They didn't show none of that on the teaser so far. They didn't show none of that. So we'll see. And it comes out this year, so it might be a little bit more practical than what we think, or maybe they worked on it a little bit more. But also too, but I can believe it with the people that's getting paid. They probably is getting paid super good, but they probably are getting spread out super thin because shit. Yeah, at the beginning of the year, we still was hearing about Ryan Coogler just writing Black Panther. You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying? So
yeah. That's the thing. What they do is like they make announcements and dates for things, so it forces that time to you got to match that date. Like we talked about, like
mhm,
with the Avengers movies coming out in 2025, it's like okay, now you have a director for one of those movies, but you probably don't have a
mhm,
script. You probably are not in production on it already. You don't know who's going to be in the movie. Like some of these things, it's like you have to rush to meet that date of when it's kind of going to be coming up. And you mentioned about them kind of
mhm.
being like different people working on the show, so it's kind of touched on here in this paragraph. It says to get work, the houses been on a project. He's talking about the VFX houses that were trying to come in right under one other's bid. With Marvel, the bids were typically coming quite a bit under, and Marvel's happy with the relationship, but it saves it money. But what ends up happening is Marvel projects tend to be understaffed, where I would usually have a team of 10 VFX artists on a non-Marvel movie, or on one Marvel movie, I got two, including myself. So every person's
Damn.
doing more work than they need to do. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And to close out the article, he mentioned some of the problems, like I mentioned, like I said, are universal to every show and every project, but end up doing less over time on other shows. You end up being able to push back more on the directors when they say something like, "Hey, I want this." You can be like, "This doesn't make sense." Not every client has bullying power of Marvel. And the big thing also this person mentioned was that there's a growing sense of unionization for the VFX houses. I think a union, there's a lot of people saying that's going to be coming. I think I strongly encourage that. I think that'd be great for VFX artists to be unionized in order to help protect themselves from being overworked. He says there's a growing movement to do that because it helped make sure that VFX houses can take bids without having to consider what the impacts would be. Because a lot of times it's like you get to work on a Marvel show and you'll work for that on that for cheaper just because it's cool. So there's also things about Marvel hiring these people. And go like, well, hey, you're working for Marvel. Who doesn't want to work for Marvel, right? It's a big project. You're gonna be well known, but if you're working for Marvel and the shit looks like crap, I mean, who cares that you just work for Marvel? I mean, sometimes these special effects do look like kind of crap with these shows, and that goes into one of the big
Yeah.
complaints that a lot of people have with the MCU stuff. So, yeah,
think they try to keep them small too because they don't want the paint to drip over, man. I think they keep them. I mean, that's crazy small to go to 10 to 3, but I don't know. I think they just keep it small to keep a lot of the VFX different, also. So maybe so.
And thank you for the follow, D Nice. Thank you, by the way, for the follow, man. Much appreciated for that. Yeah.